This is the FlipNerd.com Expert Real Estate Investing Show, the show for real estate investors, whether you're a veteran or brand new. I'm your host, Mike Hambright, and each week I bring you a new expert guest that will share their knowledge and lessons with you. If you're excited about real estate investing, believe in personal responsibility, and taking control of your life and financial destiny, you're in the right place. Welcome back to the FlipNerd.com Expert Interview Show Top 10 series, where we're sharing our top 10 shows from 2017. Now, perhaps one of the top phrases discussed amongst real estate investors, top real estate investors during the past year or so, has been the word systems and processes. Top real estate investors have been focused on building systems and processes, and many of these systems have found their way down to even newer investors. There's some powerful tools out there these days to help real estate investors. In this episode, we continue with the FlipNerd Top 10 award-winning shows, where I interview my friend Gabriel Garcia, and we talk about how to build systems and processes to help scale your business. Let's go ahead and get started. Gabriel, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah. I'm excited to talk about this topic today. And before I knew what we were going to talk about today, because we just decided that, right? Is I was thinking about that this morning, and I kind of told you it was just seeing people post stuff on Facebook groups about hustling and driving for dollars and all those things. And hey, when you start, you need to hustle and you need to kind of get things going. But to grow your business, you can't do it alone, right?
Right.
So I think it's going to be great to talk about how to build your business through people and systems and maybe partners and all sorts of stuff like that. Because, let's face it, if you don't do that, if you left corporate America or you left a job to be an entrepreneur or to be a business owner, if it's you doing everything, then you've really just created another job for yourself ultimately. Yeah.
I think most people don't realize that. I think, even myself, I think when most people think of themselves as a business owner, but they really think of as being self-employed, they're not really thinking of really being a business owner, because it's a totally different mind shift.
Yeah. Well, explain that a little bit. What do you think the difference is? Because I think a lot of people get caught up in that. I'm self-employed, but you're still gainfully employed. Like you're still working as hard as you ever were, right?
You're not really a business owner. You're probably working more than what you were working as an employee. That's number one.
Yeah.
Hey, you're going to get paid a lot more for it if you're doing it right. If you're successful, you're going to get paid a lot more than what you would at your job. But ultimately, you have a job. If you stop working, the income stops coming in. That's the main difference as a business owner. If you stop working, the income comes in no matter what. And pretty much you have what you call a sellable business. You can go ahead and pretty much, call a broker or put your business up for sale and sell it. No one's going to buy you. They're going to buy a business, meaning it works without you. You don't have to. You can show up now for a month and everything will be in order and everything will be working and your business will be doing great,
Yeah, I think that's the trouble that a lot of real estate investors have. A lot of small businesses actually is if you're the key person and you're like, and don't get me wrong, I'm stuck in this situation on some of my businesses too, but at least I'm aware of it. And so, but I will say, I literally, this is my first day back. I just got back after being gone for 5 or 6 days, and my business didn't stop. We still had things going on. I check my email here and there. I've never, I'm not to the point yet where I have a business that I could leave for months at a time, but I've left for a week or two at a time and checked some emails here and there for fires I needed to put out. But anyway, I think it's great to talk about that. So, but hey, before we kind of jump into talking about building your business, why don't you kind of tell your background a little bit and how you got started and maybe a little bit about how your business has evolved?
Yeah, so I got started back in the end of 2012, going to some Rich Dad seminars. I pretty much started reading the books Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant. That's how I started. I had just finished graduating from music business in Orlando. My dream at the time was to be a hip-hop artist, and I wasn't even thinking about real estate. But ultimately I was broke, and I figured I needed to get money. I didn't have money, so the only thought that I had to me was, why don't I go to the library and read about money? Maybe that'll help me understand why I don't have money. So worked. It was a good solution, right? And so I read those books, and it kind of opened up my eyes to all these new possibilities of ways to make money. Knowing the difference between assets and liabilities, I didn't even really know about that. Even though I was like, I got the award in my school for, what was it? It was like one of I got like the award for like the best in accounting. You know, I didn't really think about assets and liabilities on a personal basis. Like, what is that? You know, and how do you acquire them, and what do they mean for you and your financial future? So, learning those things got me thinking. I'm like, man, you know, if I can buy all these properties and it brings me income regardless whether I work or not, then that's the key to financial freedom. So, that pretty much just sparked me up completely. It just it elevated me into another level of I guess aliveness. I was, you know, it got me engaged in life and gave me something to actually work for and work towards for. So, started going to seminars back in 2012. Implemented what I learned from the seminars. Made a little deal there, like on April of 2013. I think was my first deal where I basically just, you know, daisy chained a deal from somebody else that made like $1,000. Probably one of the hardest $1,000 I ever made. And, you know, I just kept stumbling and working so hard and learning. And, you know, I'm sure you know, being in this business, that there's so many things to learn and there's so many different strategies to learn that when you're first starting off, you learn 100 strategies and you start implementing on them, but you don't get success because really what you need to figure out is just one or two.
Right.
You know, you don't need 100. And so you're everywhere all over the place. And that's how I was. And I knew I needed help, but help costs money. Or knowing somebody who, you know, I had some other people who wanted to bring me on as a partner in a company or whatever and stuff like that. But it just, I don't know, it just didn't vibe with me right. You know, and I've always been a very intuitive person. If it doesn't feel right, I'm not going to do it. So I finally ended up getting a mentor, a local mentor who showed me the ropes. I basically had to pay him $5,000. I paid him $5,000. And the deal was that he would mentor me, show me the ropes, and basically I had to split, you know, 3 deals with him or 4 deals with him. So that's how I pretty much got started. I did my first wholesale deal. I think it was November 2013. That the next year, I quit my job in March. I got a wholesale deal where I made like $40K, and I just quit my job right away. You know, there's some people who wait to have all the savings up, and at that time I was only making 25% of what I earned because I had to split half with my mentor, and then I had to split half with who's my wife, because she pretty much lent me the $5,000. So she's like, I'll give you the money, but you have to split it with me too.
Yeah.
So then I did that. So as soon as I got the money, I just quit because I knew, like, man, I'm wasting time here at this job. Like I could be making so much more money using all this extra time that I have, but I can't. I'm stuck in this job. So I quit my job in March of that year, which was 2014, went full-time. That was my first time full-time, and now fast forward, we're here 2016. This year we'll probably do somewhere around, I'm hoping to hit, my goal was to hit the $3 million mark in gross profit. We're not going to hit it. Well, it's not that, I mean, we still can, but it doesn't look like we're going to hit it. We're probably going to be shy about $500,000 to $700,000. So we'll probably be somewhere around 2.25, 2.5 this year, depending on how we finish off.
That's amazing. So, and not that units matter, but how many units will you guys do this year?
We'll probably do somewhere around 100 to 120, give or take, somewhere around that ballpark range. We're already at around 80 year to date, and we got a bunch of that doesn't include the properties that we've already purchased that haven't sold yet on the rehab side.
So those are sales, yeah.
So they haven't been counted yet that are going to close. So.
Yeah. So what's fascinating about what I know of you is that you're very thoughtful and insightful in terms of growing your business, and it's something you're passionate about, which is why we're talking about it today. So in a short period of time, 2 or 3 years, you've gone from doing your first deal to doing 100 plus deals a year. And I know it's been very methodical. So kind of talk about, because I think a lot of real estate investors, get stuck at that one or two deal a month. Either they don't get started at all, which is probably the majority, unfortunately, or they get stuck at that one or two deal a month level, which I say stuck. If that's your goal, then there's nothing wrong with that. But you probably can't afford overhead. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about today about putting some systems and people in place, it gets to a point to where to grow, you have to invest, and you might have to do a deal or two a month to cover your non-advertising overhead.
Yeah.
Then your advertising is on top of that, right? But just talk about how you grew so fast, and I know it was through putting systems in place and ultimately forming a partnership and other things like that. But at a high level, just talk about how to get from that entry point of, doing a deal here and there, or even a deal or two a month, to taking it to a whole nother level.
So I would say there's a couple different aspects to it. The first aspect is maybe the spiritual or mental aspect, if you want to talk about. And for me, there is always the desire for growth. Obviously, growing just because you think it's cool, it's not really a good reason, right? You always hear like these personal development people talk about, ask why first, figure out your why, then don't worry about the how. The why is more important. So for me, like my why was, I just wanted to be great at something, man. Like, as a kid, my dream was to be a professional baseball player. I used to play baseball. By the time I got to high school, I was messing around, doing drugs, smoking pot, doing all the stupid stuff, high school kids do. And, all the kids who were working hard in baseball and the kids who I was better at one point as we were younger, once we got to high school, they were way better than me. And that left me upset, and I couldn't grow, and I stopped growing. So they overpassed me. So that hurt inside, and then later I got into music, and from a talent perspective on the music side, I was very, very good. But I'm not built for that lifestyle of constantly being out on the road and being in nightclubs and bars and stuff like that. And that's when I realized that world wasn't for me. Yeah. That's how you make your living. And with real estate, it was like, what, man, this fits my lifestyle. Like I can do this. I can make a lot of money here without sacrificing how many hours I work a day. I can be home, I can do all this stuff. So I got really passionate about it. And for me, my why has always been like, I want to be great at something. And how can I be great if I'm just doing a couple of deals a year? Like I need to blow this thing out the water. I need to make several million for me. So I know that I'm one of the best at what I do. So that's one of my whys. So I would say that's the first aspect, is you got to have you have to have a good reason to do it. And it has to make sense to you, right? I don't care if anyone thinks I'm great or not. It's all about my own perspective of myself, So it's got to be for you, and you got to have your own reason for it that gets your blood flowing and makes you wake up early if that's the case, and makes you stay up later if that's the case, and gets you going, man. It's got to get you excited. It's got to get you motivated. It's got to get you pumped.
Are you looking to change your life through real estate investing? If you're interested in either getting started or taking your business to the next level, please check out FlipNerd's private program at theinvestormachine.com. This is the most robust real estate investor coaching, networking, and mastermind on the planet, and designed for your success. If you're ready to roll up your sleeves, ready to take personal responsibility for your own success, and ready to dive into a world-class instructional coaching program that provides you step-by-step instruction to help you achieve financial freedom, then you should apply today. Spaces are limited, and candidates are only considered after an application and interview process. Think you might be a fit? Learn more today at theinvestormachine.com.
I can do all this stuff. So I got really passionate about it. And for me, my why has always been like, I want to be great at something. And how can I be great if I'm just doing a couple of deals a year? Like I need to blow this thing out the water. I need to make several million for me. So I know that I'm one of the best at what I do. So that's one of my whys. So I would say that's the first aspect, is you got to have you have to have a good reason to do it. And it has to make sense to you, right? I don't care if anyone thinks I'm great or not. It's all about my own perspective of myself, So it's got to be for you, and you got to have your own reason for it that gets your blood flowing and makes you wake up early if that's the case, and makes you stay up later if that's the case, and gets you going, man. It's got to get you excited. It's got to get you motivated. It's got to get you pumped, you know?
Yeah, and I think like a lot of, not to compare a newbie real estate investor to a professional athlete or a musician or any of those things, but it is similar in the sense that even like a heart surgeon. Okay, I have a couple friends I have a friend that's a surgeon. But if something happens to his hands or something happens to him, like he's out of business, and, or if you want to take an extended vacation or extended leave, if you're not working, you're not making money generally. Right. So I think those things are tough because, I mean, there's the reason there's a lot of broke former professional athletes is because they made a lot of money. They didn't know how to handle it. And when they lost that contract or lost their job, then they don't know what else to do. Right. So that's one of the beauties of scaling your business up in real estate investing is that you can start to remove yourself from some of the day-to-day to where you could still make money even if you're kind of behind the scenes or even out of the scenes for a little while, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of dive into some of the specific things that allow you to scale. So I want to talk about, I guess, kind of structure in terms of how to structure your business. And maybe we just kind of tie together people and structure, I guess. But what have you found that is kind of the right fit? And I guess one of the interesting things, you probably agree with this if I say this, is whatever we talk about here today, everybody kind of needs to do trial and error because a lot of it comes down to what you're personally good at, right? If you're, you can talk about this a little bit, but if you're not good at something or you hate something, that's probably one of the things you should fill a gap for first that you don't want to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not like we were talking about earlier, as long as it's not like one of those higher level things.
Right. I'm not good at being a CEO. I'm just gonna hire somebody off of Craigslist. Yeah.
Or I hate I hate looking at my P&L, but I'm gonna hire somebody else to tell me how much money I'm making and losing. I mean,
right.
It's not the best idea.
Yeah.
But I mean, for all the, I mean, and you can hire people for those things as you grow, but when you're starting off, the reality is you just can't. But yeah, definitely. I got all the other stuff, like on these wholesaling groups, you see all these people who are like so excited that not to knock them, but they're so excited because they just stuffed 1,000 envelopes or 5,000 envelopes. I'm like, really? I'm like, why? I'm like, why is that why is that such like something to be excited about? Like, you should be paying someone $10 an hour for that stuff. If you know how to do a deal, like you're wasting your time doing that. That's just a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know if you follow Gary V at all, Gary Vaynerchuk. I like Gary V. I like his general message, but I think people get lost in that the hustle is the destination. And it's like you, as a real estate investor, especially early on, you have to hustle and you have to work hard. But if you celebrate the hustle, like that's the achievement. I think the results are the achievement, right? So people get hung up on that, I think.
Yeah. I'm results driven, man. I don't care. If I got all, what's that word? What's that term? You can be. There's a big difference between busy and being productive.
Right.
Okay, you can be busy all day and say, look at all these things you got done. But at the end of the day, man, if the numbers in the bank don't add up, it's all.
What did you produce? Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the only way you can grow your business is through other people, right? Is leveraging other people's resources or time or, so talk a little bit about, one of the things that I want to kind of point out. I know before we start recording here, Gabriel shared his organization chart with me. And I think one thing that's really interesting to note inside of there, we kind of looked at it at a high level, is that your name was on several roles. Like it's your intention to ultimately remove yourself from those roles. But I think sometimes people they think, well, I have to do all these things. So they don't think of it in terms of an org chart. They don't think of it in terms of seats. Like those are some of your responsibilities, but you've got it still broken out to where eventually someday that will be somebody else's responsibility, right?
Right.
Where did you learn that from? Is that an EOS thing?
That is an EOS thing. It's also an eMyth thing. If you're onto the eMyth, on the eMyth as well, they go over the organization chart. So we had one before EOS, and then once we got into EOS, we refined it and got it even better. But yeah, the organization chart it's one of the basic fundamentals of really growing a business, because the whole scope of the organization chart is you want to know, you want to build out your business and say, okay, what's the goal? Is the goal $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, whatever that is? How does that look like? Like if you're doing 10 million, you need to put on your thinking hat and brainstorm and figure out, if I'm doing 10 million, how does that look like? How many deals a month are we running through? How much are we spending in marketing? How many people in the marketing department need to fulfill those tasks? How many people do I need in acquisition? And you departmentalize your business so you can see the whole picture and know, okay, this is how everything works. This is the whole entire structure of the business. This is how it flows. This is all the people that need to be in place, the seats that need to be in place. And then you can start plugging in the seats. Now you can start hiring. But, it's so easy. Like, people ask me all the time, like, oh, should I hire a VA to do this? I'm like, well, what is he going to do? Like, what's his role? Well, his role is to do this, it's just like they give me tasks like, create the marketing plan send an email blast, follow up with leads and this. I'm like, look, you have your person filling in. It sounds to me like you have the person filling in 4 or 5 different seats, and you're not even aware of that. Like you need to first figure out what the seats are and then hire based on those seats. Now you can have one person in multiple seats. That's fine. But just be aware of that, because you're hiring for multiple seats. So the person that's filling in those seats also needs to be aware of what seat they're in at the time they're doing the work, so they know what their input is on the business, who they're accountable to when they're doing that part, and how it fits into the whole big picture of the business. Because if they don't understand that, you're not going to be efficient. You're going to have so much moving pieces. It's hard to scale that.
Yeah. And even looking at your org chart or thinking about how my company is set up, or anybody that's listening to this, how you should think about it is just presume you're a major corporation. You're going to need the same functions. You have to have a financial function and cash management. You could break that down into a bunch of different areas. Bookkeeping. Okay, there's a bunch of different seats inside of there potentially. Now, it may be all the same person that is your bookkeeper and managing payments to vendors and also managing your cash. Maybe be careful letting somebody else manage your cash, by the way. But you need a marketing person. You need acquisition side. You need a disposition side. You need all those things in our business. Now, your name may be on all of them when you start, but at least you're kind of designing what it'll look like when you grow, right?
Right. And then, the EOS, if people don't know EOS, it's basically it's an entrepreneurial system to run your business based on a book called Traction. And basically, on EOS, one of the things that really helps with EOS is the whole premise of the book is to gain traction. So one of the ways that they use to gain traction is once you have your organizational chart, now you know who are the leaders who are accountable for that department. So if you have your marketing department, who's responsible for everything that happens in marketing, acquisitions, who's responsible for that. So then all your managers who are responsible for all those departments are having what's called these level 10 meetings with everyone in those on below them, and they're making sure that you're going over your key metrics for everything in those roles and everything's getting done. And if it's not getting done, you're resolving the issue right away and figuring out why. And this is done on a weekly basis, so that way the business can gain traction. And then vice versa, all the managers are meeting with each other to present all the lower things that are happening and make sure the business is meeting its goals ultimately. So
yeah,
it's a lot of stuff when you're first starting off. When you're first starting off, you're just busy running around, but ultimately you're never going to get to that next step if you don't become aware of these things that happen and start setting yourself goals to ultimately be at that seat to where you can be there.
Yeah, even something as simple, I see a lot of real estate investors that even something as simple as just tracking your advertising expense and leads, how many appointments you went on, how many offers you made. It's a funnel, right? I mean, what starts that? If you ask the typical new real estate investor, and we're talking about this stuff constructively. So if you guys are listening to this and saying, or like criticizing, it's like, no, here's how to learn how to take it to the next level. But if you're not making, if you make, I'll just make some numbers up here. If you make 20 offers a week, then you're going to buy a house a week. I mean, there's some, probably have about a 5% conversion, or you get 20 leads a week. then you should buy a house a week, something like that. But so don't be surprised if you get to the end of the month and you only had 8 leads that you didn't buy 4 houses. It's like, well, you kind of knew that, or you should have known that at the end of week 1, right? Just tracking kind of basic performance of your business. And I think a lot of folks don't do that. They just assume if I work hard and I hustle and I grind, then good things will happen. And that may be okay generally, but that's not a recipe for growth.
Yeah, you have to have the numbers. I mean, this year, when you said that our growth was very methodical, I mean, this year was more methodical than any other year that's ever been. And that's the reason why we've been able to pretty much over double what we've done from last year to this year, because we have our numbers on point, and we know exactly on every department the numbers that are needed for us to achieve whatever that goal is. If it's to do 150 deals, well, I know what it costs me to generate 1 lead. I know how many leads convert to a deal. I know how many leads convert to an appointment. I know how many appointments convert to an actual contract, and how much does it cost me to bring in a lead? How much does it cost me for that deal to come in? So you have to have all this data so you can reverse engineer the business and say, okay, if I want to do 300 deals this year, this is what it's going to take. Is it even feasible?
Right. And that's kind of how you do it too, is you say, hey, if I'm going to do X number of deals, I'm going to need administrative support. I'm going to need support in these areas. I'm going to have, I can't have a part-time bookkeeper anymore. I need a full-time bookkeeper. You can start to figure out based on what your goals are, you back into how much advertising you need to do. And then you have to kind of layer out, well, where am I going to need support at, or where are we going to need basically capacity to do the different things that have to happen in the business, right?
Right.
Yeah. What would you say if let's not necessarily what you did, but what you would do if you had to do all over again in terms of what are some of the first positions, let's say it this way, what are some of the first positions that you think a typical real estate investor needs to fill if they're looking to grow?
First I would fill, you want to fill, from an economic perspective, just fill the less paying roles, right? I mean, like, marketing, if you have a marketing department, I'm sure you need to gather leads and, put leads into an Excel or into your CRM, however you're tracking that. Someone needs to do that. You can hire a VA for that. That's a $5 to $6 an hour job. Don't spend your time on that. If you're stuffing envelopes and stuff like that, and dropping off stuff at the post office, that's a $10 job, $12 an hour job. You shouldn't be doing that. Spend the money. Now, if you don't have a job and you don't have any income, that's a different story. But when we first started, I always budgeted from my income at least a certain amount of money that I knew I can consistently spend over time regardless if no money came in. I knew that I could spend $500 a month or $800 a month, no matter what, and I would be committed to spending that regardless of whatever came in, so that way I can start, getting stuff done without me doing everything.
Right.
So you gotta outsource basic stuff in the marketing. As you grow, I see all these real estate investors there's a lot of real estate investors that are doing pretty good amount of volume. There's real estate investors who are doing 30, 40, 50 deals a year, and they're answering the phones. Like, that's crazy. You shouldn't be answering the phones. You should have somebody answering the phones for you. That's a 12, 15 hour dollar job. And when you find somebody really, really good and they're great, give them a raise, And all the admin stuff on the back end, bookkeeping, you shouldn't be doing that. That's a cheap job. You shouldn't be doing transaction coordination. That's also someone you can find relatively cheap. And then, the bigger hires come on dispositions and acquisitions as you go to. And I think you basically have to look at every market's going to be a little bit different. And what I found is you want to look at, okay, what are you going to pay that person? How much is it going to cost to actually get someone to do that? If you're going to pay commission based, what's your average profit per deal? If your average profit's 10 grand, will somebody be comfortable? If you're doing 2 deals a month, is that enough money to motivate someone to work for you full time?
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's not, then you probably got to scale up a little bit more. If it is, then you're ready. Get someone on board, and that person can do a lot more than 2 deals a month. So now you have opportunity. Now you're in better shape now to be able to scale, because now you're not doing everything. You know, you have people doing them. So
Yeah, I've had that exact conversation with a lot of times. About a lot of times, I think folks look at, especially those that are thinking about bringing on an acquisitions person. Their first thought is, well, what do you pay your acquisitions person? And that's differs. You know, some people pay 10%, some people pay 15% if they're totally variable compensation. But yeah, you're right. If just hypothetical numbers here, if your average, you know, gross margin on a deal was 10 grand, and you're doing 2 deals a month, your acquisitions person is making $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year. So are you going to find a great dedicated salesperson to work for you for $36,000 a year? Probably not, right? So I think sometimes you have to look at one thing is if you could help that person make $80,000 a year, you know, you got to find somebody that is happy with that. When you find somebody that's like, well, I'm used to making $250,000 a year, that's probably not going to be a great acquisitions person for you, because they're probably going to be disappointed because they won't have the capacity probably to buy at that level. But I think it's important to think about, you know, one is if I had a full-time person and they had the capacity to buy 5 or 6 deals a year, what would that do for me? And then can I afford the advertising to feed that monster now, right? So
right.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about hey, real fast before we get started, go any further, I want to ask you, I got kind of a question of the week here that I want to ask you. So I know you're a student of the game. So why don't you kind of share with us what your favorite book is? Let's say your favorite book that most people probably haven't heard of, that you think would help them in terms of growing their business.
In just overall business growth
Sure.
stuff. That's a tough one, man.
Stumped you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite, but it's been one of the most useful ones as far as being able to take everything that the book advises to do and doing it and seeing results. I'd say Traction has been that. There's other great books that I've read. I mean, I got hundreds of books in here, man. Something, but that one's been like all the other books. I always take something small and add it to it. But Traction's like I took like everything in Traction and put it in, and it's work. It's not necessarily my favorite read. It's not a book that I'm like, oh, I'm pumped. I read this book, but it's useful.
Yeah, it's a great book, and it's obviously very fitting for what we're talking about today, because it talks a lot about how to take your business to the next level and how to put some structure around it. So, okay, well, hey, let's talk a little bit about systems. So, the importance of systems. I know when a lot of folks start off, they have no systems, or they have a legal pad and some manila folders, and maybe that evolves to Excel spreadsheet. But let's just talk about, maybe you could share just for a minute on kind of where you started and then where you kind of moved up to. We don't need to get specific on what system. Well, you could share what systems you use if you want to, but just the importance of that and how a busy aspiring real estate investor should think about it in terms of what it can do for them.
Yeah, I mean, the systems are really important, especially when you're hiring, because that's your pretty much training manual. I mean, how you it's easy to just, if you're going to hire, for instance, let's just give an example. Let's say you're going to hire a transaction coordinator to manage your transactions, and you say, you don't have any systems in place. How is she going to come in and know exactly what you want? Like, she can't read your mind, and you can go ahead and tell her what it is you want, but I guarantee you're going to miss a lot of stuff when you tell her. She's going to miss a lot of stuff. You're not going to be able to hold her accountable, and you're going to create a mess, and she's going to be driving you crazy because she's either going to have two personalities. She's either going to not do anything without asking for approval from you, so she's going to be calling you every 2 seconds, or she's going to be a type that's going to do everything without your approval, and you're going to be like, holy shit, what is she doing? So the systems pretty much is your guide and your employee's guide for knowing each step of the way, what to do. So, let's give an example in transaction coordinating. What's the first step? For us, it's, reviewing the contract. It's your step one, reviewing the contract, making sure that, the name and public records match. We have a binding contract. We use Podio as a CRM, so she makes sure that she marks the new file just came in. She puts all the fields in Podio for our CRM, the purchase price, the escrow deposit, when the closing date is, when the inspection period expires, and all those workflows populate in Podio. She opens title. She sends it to the title company. She'll send the escrow letter to the seller if we got to put up escrow. She'll call a seller, let her know that, hey, we got a closing happening. I'm the closing coordinator. If you need anything, I'm here to help you. Let me know. And that's pretty much the first step. She's got a whole bunch of other steps to the funnel she's got to go through, but we're very clear between her and I, because now in my business I manage operations. She knows exactly what steps she has to do. So if she misses one of those steps, I can clearly determine what step she missed and say, hey, you didn't do this step. Go back to your manual. You need to read it again. You understand why you missed it. Okay. So it's pretty much the structure for your business. I mean, you need it if you want to have a business.
Yeah, and so I think the other important thing is to kind of document how to do certain things, right? I mean, that's a system in and of itself, because if that person leaves or quits or gets fired or whatever, you don't have to go through and explain all that to the very next person again. I mean, everybody's gonna have questions, and that's fine. And you kind of learn from their questions, like, oh yeah, I guess I should create a little training video on this because I don't have that. But I think that's really important, is that in order to scale your business, if you have to keep explaining over and over and over again how to do something, it's not that hard to just open up Camtasia or Screencast-O-Matic or some sort of screen capture tool and just talk into a microphone and say this is how you do it. And then when you hire somebody, to be able to say, go watch these videos and let me know what questions you have. And if you get stuck somewhere, then go back and watch the video again. And right.
And the thing is, like in our business, we're not like in this startup venture side, where you all of a sudden you go from 5 employees to 100. In those businesses, systems are even more critical because you're just bringing on so much people in place. In our business, right. I mean, you can pretty much have, for the most part, 1 or 2 people in a role, and you can scale a pretty big business in our business, in terms of profit and revenue with 1 or 2 people.
Sure.
So, but I mean, they're still necessary because, like you said, if the person leaves, they don't go, and you need some type of outline to hold people accountable, and so that everyone's on the same page of what needs to be done, and there's no misconceptions. Oh, because I thought you said this, oh, I didn't say that. This is what it is. And you can have the videos, and you can have diagrams. I mean, that's one of the things we're working on now. Is like everything for us is all typed and documented, but we're realizing that we want to get it to the phase where we want to have it all 3, in one format. So depending on your learning type, you could just come in and say, okay, well, I don't want to read, I'd rather watch. Or, I don't want to watch a video, I'd rather just see the visual diagram. Whatever your learning type is, you can just get it and run with it.
Yeah. The great thing I would say is, unlike, so we've been using Podio for several years, actually before I knew anybody else that was using it. Now everybody's using it. And I'll say ours is not nearly as tricked out as, some of the folks that we know. But it's a great system, but I'm not here to promote anything in particular. There's a whole bunch of systems out there that are great tools. And I think the important thing is for a newer real estate investor is, don't let it overwhelm you, but just, don't recreate the wheel either. Just plug into a system that, there's a handful of systems that almost all real estate investors use that have a system that they subscribe to. And, you don't have to recreate the wheel. And the great thing about it is then they all have associated Facebook groups or support desks or whatever that can answer questions for you, or have probably a bunch of videos on how to do certain things. And so, there used to be a time where you had anything like this, you'd have to go create it yourself and figure it out, right? But that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, if you're a new real estate investor, if you're a one-man shop where you just got you got 1 or 2 people on your team, I would say, like, the most important thing you can do as an entrepreneur is to learn how to stop and look at your data. And if you don't have the data, figure out how to get it, because you need to realize the difference of when you're working in the business and when you're working on the business. And you got to dedicate at least a certain amount of time of your time to work on the business on a weekly basis, because that's the only way you're going to be able to go from, I like the way the E-Myth classifies it the most. From the technician, which is you're the guy actually doing the job, from the manager, being the one that oversees the technician, and then being the actual entrepreneur, the one that actually owns a business. You gotta set time once a week to go through that, and then or maybe once a month if you can't even do once a week, and then look at it every quarter. And you just constantly want to be, doing that stuff. Like for us on a quarterly basis, we take a day off just to work on the business the whole entire day.
Yeah.
And on a weekly basis, it's about a 90-minute. I mean, now we're always working on the business now. I mean, I don't particularly work in the business. It's mostly on it because now we're all on the managerial part. But you gotta do it, because you gotta be able to look at, like you said, you gotta know what the numbers are. You gotta see what the deals are. You gotta see, okay, where are you at today? How do you get from here to there? You gotta think big picture, and you gotta stop. If you're always hustling and you're always grinding, you're not thinking. You're just doing, and you have to know how to turn on the other side of your brain.
Pull back. Yeah. My thing for me, I can't. It's like I need a change of scenery. So I can't. If I come to my office, I know that I'm gonna get stuck doing something I didn't know I was going to do. Like there's just, I have actually a few different businesses now. So I have employees here and people that want to chit chat and all those things. And that's all fine. That stuff's great. But if I need to get focused on something, then I just literally truthfully, almost every morning I go to Starbucks for like a couple hours and just stay at a high level of like, what do I need to accomplish here? Where are we at with this, project we're working on or whatever, because it's so easy to get in the weeds if you allow yourself to go there. So yeah, I think for some people, if that makes sense for you, it's like you got to find a way to, when I was in corporate America, we had I worked with a lot of C-level people, so we had corporate retreats. Like we would just go somewhere and kind of like do that. Just do the same thing for yourself. It could be Starbucks, it could be under a tree in a park. I mean, it could be anywhere, right?
It's like the same thing, it's like I'm sure real estate investors can relate to this. If you're a rehabber, would you ever rehab a house without making a plan first? Would you just go in there and do whatever you need? You probably won't. You have a plan. And you've seen like when you actually build a house, you have an actual set of drawings of what it is you're going to build, how it's going to be laid out. So then someone can read it and know exactly what it is that they're doing. That's their system to know, okay, I got to build this exactly here. So that's in essence what you're doing. You're stepping away from the work to just build your plan. You need to build your plan of where your business is going to go and how it's going to look like and all that stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. So any kind of, without spending a whole lot more time on any kind of other thoughts on just systems, and I think one thing that I want to clarify that I think people get hung up on sometimes is a system doesn't necessarily mean software. It might just mean a process that you document on a checklist or something, right? I mean, systems could be a lot of things. It's just kind of how you do things, right?
Yeah, I mean, ours is all just on documents. So we basically have a Google Drive, and I have a folder in Google Drive that's called working procedures, and then we have it based off, different every department. So everyone who works in our business knows what their department is in, and they know which pertains to them. So each department has each row. So like our operations department, we have our disposition manager, our rehab manager, our short sale processor, and our transaction coordinator. And they know their stuff is located in there, and they know that their processes are documented there. So if they ever have a question, they forget how to do something, it's all there. They should only be calling me if it's like something that's either not documented in the system, or just something that's, stuff that's just not documented in the system. It's like, hey, this happened and I don't know how to handle this, okay.
Yep. Well, let's take, so we don't run too long here, just take a couple minutes and talk about partnerships. So I know you have a partnership now that you didn't have initially, and my wife has always been my partner. We've kind of split the business in different ways, and but there's a lot of partnerships in real estate investing. And I think a lot of people, like you said early on, you're very apprehensive too, because a lot of people are like, no, I'm going to be my own boss now. I'm not going to have anybody that's going to be involved in making decisions other than me. But that could limit your growth too. So there's a lot of opportunities with partnerships. But maybe just share a few thoughts that might be helpful to people listening on partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the partnership didn't limit our growth at all. It actually helped us grow faster. There is a Because now you can, ideally, me and my partner didn't really do this, but ideally, you want to have a partner who complements what you're not good at, like you said. So you can focus on what you're best at, and your partner can focus on what they're best at, and hopefully they shouldn't be the same thing. So that way you can divvy up the work, and you guys can do what it is that you do best, and there's a magic that happens when you have two people working, because now when you're by yourself, who holds you accountable? You know what I mean? Now you have a partner, it's easy to say, hey dude, you said you were going to get this done, man. And you could address each other, and you don't want to be in that situation with your partner if you have mutual respect for each other. So it keeps you on your A game more. That's been my experience. Me and my partner, when we partnered, we didn't really go over our strengths and weaknesses. But luckily it still ended up fine. He had a better. One of the things I saw was that I knew that he was very deep into the marketing aspect of the business and really liked that aspect more. And I wasn't. I was more of just the big picture guy. I like creating the systems, and I like making sure all the pieces in the puzzle are plugged in. I could see where everything goes, but I didn't like the minutia of the marketing. I just want to know, is it working? Is it generating ROI? That's all I care about. I don't care about split testing and all that stuff. But I know it's important. I just don't like it. So he was into that stuff. And I like the finance side, and I like reviewing P&Ls, and I like looking at numbers, and I was kind of more the analytical guy. So it worked out fine. And I mean, for us, we basically, we had a few meetings. We used the EMIT at first. That was like really our guiding business Bible before traction. And in the EMIT, he talks about expressing what your vision is, like putting it on paper and really being clear of what it is, and something that excites you. So me and my partner would go to Starbucks, and we would have full day meetings without working, just shutting off our phones and just talking on a human level, like, what is it that we want out of life, personally, financially, spiritually, family-wise, all that stuff. And just seeing if we were in the same wavelength, and seeing if this even made sense. So we had those really deep, intimate moments with each other where we would see that stuff and just see if it really made sense. So for us, we were pretty much on the same wavelength. We had the same values as people. We had very similar belief systems, and we just kind of see eye to eye together on many things. So for us, we thought it would be a good fit, and it would work. So. But we must have had about 3 or 4 full day meetings before we actually formed the marriage, and we were just making sure that everything was good, that we were both okay with what our visions were, and we were both in sync with that, and there was no disharmony anywhere within that, so that way things wouldn't blow up after you go into partnerships.
Yeah, that's great. I will say that's a lot more than most people do, right? I think a lot of people that start a partnership, it's kind of more based on, do I like this person in terms of do I want to have a beer with this person, right? And so what ends up happening for a lot of people is they're too similar. Like, you kind of hired a carbon copy of yourself, and like you said, the things that you're not good at, they're probably not good at either. So it's harder to divvy up tasks because you both have the same strengths and weaknesses, or similar. But not that those can't work. I think, it sounds like you did a lot of great things to make sure that, because truthfully, I think a lot of people forget that we should be building businesses here to support the life that we want to live, right? A lot of times it ends up happening the other way around. And so you might end up resenting that person because you're not living the life you want to live. But by design, you both are not good at some of the same things, and maybe don't even have similarities in terms of, outside of the business.
That's what it's ultimately about, right? Because that's what we looked at, was well, how much money do we want to have in our bankroll? If I want to net $1 million a year, and my partner's well, that's great, Gabe. I respect that, but honestly, I'm happy with $200,000 a year. That would satisfy me. That's an issue, because now, if you're being partners, you're going to want to do what it takes to get to the million, and he's not.
Right.
So, for us, it was all about knowing it was all about discussing what we wanted out of life first and seeing if we were there together and if we would go down that ride with each other versus just seeing it wasn't business at all for us doing the things. It was more life and seeing if we were in the same life path versus business path, and then the business work, because we were friends before business, you know what I mean? And like for both of us, it was like, dude, at the end of the day, you know, partnerships go bad, but I see you as a friend first, then a business partner, and I want to make sure that stays the same way. You know, I want to keep it friends first always in business.
Yeah. And I think we don't have time to talk about kind of scorecards and stuff like that, but I think kind of like a marriage, it's important to have checkups, right? Just every once in a while, because I've seen some partnerships, you probably have to, end really bad. You've seen some marriages end really bad, but you kind of when you kind of know the people, you're like, well, they probably never sat down and talked about like, what am I upset about, or what's not working, or what can we do differently? And I think it ultimately somebody ends up resenting somebody for something they did or didn't do, yet they probably don't bring it to their attention. It just kind of festers, and it gets to a point to where there's just a blow up, and it's over, you know?
For sure. And that's what the weekly meetings are for, you know? Like in those weekly meetings, you want to bring up issues, and those issues are, you know, if you're feeling a certain way, well, you want to bring it up, man, because it's gonna come up sooner or later. So bring it up now before it becomes a huge issue.
Yeah.
For us, like one thing, you know, I was showing you my organizational chart earlier. We were mapped out totally different quarter ago, and we've changed the way we're mapped out in our charts now. And one of the things too is my partner's moved to Israel. He's not living here in South Florida anymore. Well, he's not 100% sure, but he's there for 2 months right now, and he's working from there. And so we realized, one, from there, you won't be effective here. You'll be more effective here because you need to be here for this. Two was another thing. If we were looking at our chart, when we saw our chart, we're like, man, like, are you naturally inclined to do this stuff? Because I'm naturally inclined to do that, and I'm not there, and vice versa. And we're like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, why are we here? And like, so seeing that gives you a better understanding of where you need to be in the business, and being like, okay, I should be held accountable for this, and not this, and vice versa. And then, you know, as partners, you know, okay, if you're accountable for this, dude, I'm holding you accountable for this, and if you're accountable for that, I'm holding you accountable for this. So you have to be very clear of what your roles are in the business and who's responsible for what.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, Gabriel, thanks for spending so much time with us today. Definitely appreciate it. Some great lessons in here. Hopefully everybody that's listening got something out of it. I'm sure they did. If folks want to learn more about you, where should they go?
I mean, they can just check me out on Facebook, I guess. It's Gabriel Garcia, or they can check out our company site. It's FloridaCashLoanBuyers.com. We're always hiring, so if you're interested in employment opportunities, it's there.
Yeah. If you want to, I mean, truthfully, maybe you could take it's funny that you say that, but if folks, why don't you think back and maybe just share one last comment on, for folks that you said you paid somebody to mentor you to help do some deals, help kind of get you out of the gate. You and I both know those first 5 or 10 deals you do give you all the confidence in the world that you didn't have before, and you're able to ramp up a lot faster. But in terms of like watching somebody, or the ability to kind of have somebody show you the ropes, maybe just share your thoughts on how important that is.
It's of the absolute importance, man. Like for me, I always talk about it, you know, you can be the guy that's, there's a guy I was having a conversation with on Facebook the other day. He was bashing anyone who spent any money on education. And he was like praising these 2 big companies, which we both know who the owners are very well. And I'm like, dude, if only you knew how much those 2 companies, the owners of those companies, have spent on their education, like you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And education doesn't have to be, buying this big mentorship. It could be in books. It could be in seminars. It could be in trainings. It could be in a one-on-one coach, and whatever it is. But you got to invest in yourself. So like for me, having the coach, if I would have not had a coach, I would have never been as successful as fast as I would have. The coach shortens your learning curve, man. I mean, if you can spend $10,000 or $20,000 to make $100,000 in 5 or 6 months versus 2 years, it just doesn't make any sense why you wouldn't do it. And vice versa, we still spend money on masterminds. I mean, I spend money to be around the best because it makes me better. It keeps me sharp. it makes our business grow, and it's of the most vital importance. I mean,
Yeah, it's important. I mean, I've bought hundreds of houses, and some people say, well, you're an expert in this or that. And what I found through the show actually is I'm an expert in very few things. It's a very narrow niche, right? But I spend tens of thousands of dollars a year on training or masterminds or different events, even outside of real estate, because it helps sharpen me in certain areas. So I think that it's a small price to pay ultimately, because the challenge with real estate investing is even if you are good, it's constantly changing. So if you're not surrounded by people or learning what's coming around the corner, preparing yourself for that, then you might get left high and dry.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you've never built $1 million business in your life, and you can be in a room full of people who have done it, that would catapult you would just fly to that $1 million path right away. Versus if you're around people who have never done it, you've never done it, you don't have personal contact with people who are living, breathing, sleeping that stuff, it's going to take you so long to get there. It's never going to happen, actually, unless you actually have millionaires in your circle of influence that you're talking to very often. Because you only know so much as the people around you. You only make as much as the people around you. Yeah. And you're as good as the people around you. So you need to look at that. You need to look at those around you.
Yeah, you and I both know that whether it's a mastermind or training programs, or going to listen to other speakers that motivate you, whatever that might be, is the value isn't in the entire thing. The value is in this 10-minute conversation or this 5-minute little nugget you hear that just changes everything. It's I think a lot of people think, well, I can't do all that, or I can't absorb all that, or I don't have time for that. It's like, yeah, but you just need a couple little nuggets in there, and that's what the value is in.
Yeah, man, and it's just like I see it as also spiritual, right? It's like think about like if you were best friends, like if you were constantly talking with Gary Vee, you were constantly talking with Donald Trump or Mark Cuban, and these big billionaires, and you were constantly talking with them, hanging out with them. Like your level of play would step up so much. Like you would have to either stop being their friends or step up to their game, because it's just the way like vibration works. Like you gotta resonate with the people around you to be with them. If not, then you got to get out of that group. So, it's just like, yeah, I just see it as spiritual. Like your vibration has to match with where you're at. And if it doesn't match, it's going to get there, and everything in your life is going to change as your vibration changes,
Yeah. Awesome, Gabriel. Hey, great to see you. We're going to add links down below. I'll dig up your Facebook profile, and we'll put a link there for people to come check you out, or maybe ask you some questions, and for your house buying business as well. So thanks for spending time with us today. Everybody, thanks for joining us for another episode. Episode number 320 is in the bag, and we're going to keep them coming, so keep on listening. So everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.
All right, Mike. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the FlipNerd.com Investing Show. If you're not yet an elite member of FlipNerd, you're missing out. We have tons of great training, including a new detailed masterclass published each month, and live training webinars with experts twice a month. Plus, you'll get access to all of our archives, where we already have a growing library of masterclasses and other training videos. Elite members also get membership in our incredible online Mastermind group, where many of the top real estate investors from across the country, including many of the hundreds of guests I've had on the show in the past, are already members. Whether you're brand new, looking to get started, or a veteran, you simply must join today. I promise you won't be disappointed. To learn more or join today, please visit flipnerd.com/lab. That's flipnerd.com/lab. See you on the next show.